America's journey to independence stands as a testament to the human spirit's yearning for freedom. It was a long and arduous path, paved with courage, sacrifice, and an unwavering belief in self-determination. This struggle for liberty began not on a battlefield, but in the hearts and minds of those who dared to dream of a new life in a new world. These were not conquerors seeking gold or glory, but ordinary people seeking something far more profound, the chance to build a better future for themselves and their children. The year 1776 marks the moment when 13 colonies declared their independence from Great Britain. This act of defiance ignited a revolution that would reshape the world. The American Revolution was not just a war for independence, it was a battle for the very soul of a nation. It tested the limits of human endurance and the power of an idea. The colonists faced overwhelming odds. They were outmatched, outgunned, and outmaneuvered by the mightiest empire on earth. Yet, they possessed something far more potent than muskets and cannons, an unshakable belief in their cause. They believed that all men were created equal, endowed with certain unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This belief, enshrined in the Declaration of Independence, became the rallying cry of the revolution. It resonated far beyond the shores of America, inspiring people around the globe to fight for their own freedom and self-governance. The story of American independence begins long before the first shots were fired. It starts with the arrival of European settlers to the shores of North America. Driven by a desire for religious freedom, economic opportunity, or simply a fresh start, these early colonists braved treacherous journeys across the Atlantic Ocean. These pioneers faced hardship and uncertainty, carving out settlements in an untamed wilderness. Life in the early colonies was arduous. The settlers had to contend with harsh weather conditions, unfamiliar diseases, and conflicts with Native American tribes, yet they persevered, driven by a spirit of self-reliance and a deep-seated belief in their own destiny. They established communities, cultivated the land, and built a new society based on their own values and aspirations. Each colony developed its own distinct character and identity. The New England colonies, founded by Puritans seeking religious freedom, emphasized education, community, and a strong work ethic. The Middle colonies, with their fertile land and diverse populations, became centers of agriculture and trade. The Southern colonies, with their plantation economies reliant on slave labor, developed a hierarchical social structure. Despite their differences, these colonies shared a common bond, a growing sense of independence from their mother country. As the colonies prospered and grew, so too did their desire for self-governance. They began to chafe under the restrictions imposed by British rule, and the seeds of discontent were sown. Over time, a chasm grew between Great Britain and its American colonies. What began as a mutually beneficial relationship, with the colonies providing raw materials and a market for British goods, transformed into one of resentment and distrust. At the heart of the growing conflict lay a fundamental disagreement over the nature of the relationship between a colony and its mother country. Great Britain, viewing the colonies as an extension of its own empire, sought to exert greater control over their affairs, particularly in matters of trade and taxation. The colonists, on the other hand, increasingly saw themselves as a distinct people, deserving of the same rights and liberties as any British citizen. Tensions escalated as the British Parliament, burdened by debt from its wars with France, imposed a series of taxes on the colonies without their consent. These acts, including the Stamp Act, the Townshend Acts, and the Tea Act, were met with fierce resistance from the colonists, who viewed them as a violation of their fundamental rights as Englishmen. The colonists argued that they should not be subjected to taxation without representation in Parliament. They demanded the same rights and liberties enjoyed by their counterparts in Great Britain, igniting a debate that would have profound consequences for both sides of the Atlantic. No more taxes without representation, the breaking point. The cry of no taxation without representation became the rallying cry of the burgeoning resistance movement. The colonists, angered by what they perceived as British tyranny, organized boycotts of British goods, staged protests, and formed committees of correspondence to share information and coordinate their actions. The situation reached a boiling point in 1770 with the Boston Massacre. British soldiers, sent to Boston to enforce order, fired upon a crowd of unarmed colonists, killing 5. The incident, although tragic, was seized upon by colonial propagandists as evidence of British brutality and further inflamed anti-British sentiment. 3 years later, the simmering tensions erupted with the Boston Tea Party. A group of colonists, disguised as Native Americans, boarded British ships docked in Boston Harbor and dumped 342 chests of tea into the water. This act of defiance, a direct challenge to British authority, shocked the British government and pushed the two sides closer to the brink of war. The shot heard round the world declaring independence. In response to the Boston Tea Party, the British Parliament passed a series of punitive acts, known as the Coercive Acts or the Intolerable Acts, designed to punish the colonists and reassert British control. These acts, which closed the port of Boston, restricted colonial self-governance, and quartered British troops in colonial homes, only served to further alienate the colonists and solidify their resolve. As the situation deteriorated, representatives from 12 of the 13 colonies convened in Philadelphia in 1774 for the First Continental Congress. The Congress, seeking a peaceful resolution to the crisis, petitioned the king for redress of grievances and called for a boycott of British goods. However, the hope for reconciliation proved short-lived. In April 1775, British troops marched on Lexington and Concord, Massachusetts, seeking to seize colonial military supplies. The colonists, forewarned, met the British with armed resistance, marking the beginning of the American Revolutionary War. The Second Continental Congress, convened in May 1775, assumed the responsibility of governing the colonies during the war. Despite initial reluctance to declare independence, the Congress appointed a committee led by Thomas Jefferson to draft a Declaration of Independence.